is going on, big ballers? It's your boy MJG coming at you with another fancy fumble episode. I got your boy Birdman here. He's coming at you from my other side over here. Joe, how the hell are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing very well, Manny. We have 1 week until the football season begins. So it's crunch time. You know, I'm looking deep into these players. I've already had one draft. I got like 3 or 4 this weekend, maybe 5. And I'm just looking forward to a good discussion about our top 15 quarterbacks this week. But before we get into it, quick word from our sponsor.
Hey there, my name is Manny James Gonzalez with PRB, and I'm a real estate agent here in Central Florida. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, military relocation pro, and big supporter of 2A and veterans' rights. My specialty is VA transactions. I'm also experienced in all parts of real estate.
I've been living in Florida for over 20 years, and I can tell you we still believe in freedom down here. One of the greatest job markets, excellent economy, and no state income tax. When it comes to an agent, you want one that's going to be honest, not afraid of a fight, and most importantly, willing to do the things that some agents aren't willing to do.
And what's that, Manny?
Shoot straight, Dan. If you're ever considering buying in Central Florida, you need somebody you can trust, and I got your 6. I'm Manny James Gonzalez, find land for the free and home for the brave.
Now to kick things off, I'm going with Jalen Hurts. He threw 23 touchdowns, rushed for over 600 yards, and racked up 15 rushing touchdowns last season. And on top of that, the Eagles have a great offensive line. So expect more of the same, or possibly for those numbers to get higher. I am banking on the numbers getting a little bit higher.
Yes, Joe. I'm not going to hate on my boy Hurts at all. I don't have him number 1, but I'm going to tell you I like that take. Let me tell you, as an Eagles fan, I like that take.
I know you did.
All right. For my number 1, brother, I got a guy that I've been pretty bullish on for the last few years, man. Mr. Josh Allen, big number 17 for Buffalo Bills. That guy is coming in, man. He's stealing all the touchdowns for all the running backs. Don't be a running back on his team, because Josh Allen, man, he averaged 23 points a game last year, PPR formats. He had over 4,300 passing yards and threw another 500 or 600 on the ground. Like, the guy was an absolute monster here. And actually, I have the stats here. He actually put up more than that. He put up 524 on the ground with 111 carries and also had 15 touchdowns. So no one actually knew that Josh tied him up, and he actually had 3 more touchdown pass. He had 6 more touchdown passes than Jalen Hurts. So he had an MVP-like year. Not sure how Lamar got it, though.
I know. I was wondering about that myself. I recently heard that. I was kind of thinking back on the season. I would have given that to Josh Allen. But hey, people give him a lot of a hard time for the interceptions that he throws, but you can't discount, as a fantasy quarterback, the numbers that he puts up. And that's why I have him at number 2. Even in games without Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, Allen was an absolute beast. I was just telling Manny right before we went live, on my first draft, I was deciding between, in the 3rd round, James Cook and Devon Achane, and I went with the safe option in James Cook. But the biggest thing on my mind is how many of those touchdowns at the goal line Josh Allen is going to take instead of James Cook. So, you know, he rushed for over 500 yards, as you said, 29 passing touchdowns, 15 rushing touchdowns, just like Jalen Hurts. Still has Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, Khalil Shakir. We'll see what he does. But Buffalo also has a great offensive line, so he's got that protection to make plays, and I expect more of the same. He could easily be the number 1 fantasy quarterback.
It's funny because we just have them flipped around, man. I have Jalen Hurts as number 2. He's gonna come out. He's gonna run the ball. He's gonna run that Philly brotherly shove. It's not the tush push for all you Homo sapiens out there that want to call it that. It's the brotherly shove. All right. It's from Philly. We named it. You guys hate us. We don't care. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we call it. That's what it's gonna be. And now you're gonna have to stop Saquon. And I can tell you right now, there's gonna be enough touches for Jalen Hurts to take another 15 at least this year as well. So expect that. But also in that Kellen Moore high passing offense, you're going to see a lot of touchdowns to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They just added Jahan Dotson. I mean, if Dallas Goedert is healthy, he could be good. I don't count much on that guy, though. But look out for that rookie, Johnny Wilson from FSU. That guy's a stud. He's 6'6", 225 pounds. He's super athletic, super fast, and he has good hands. He was a steal out of the 5th round this year. So I expect Philly to make some noise. And you're going to see a lot of dump offs to Saquon, of course. So that's going to be fantasy gold.
Exactly. You got to factor in those dump offs, just like the goal line carries. You know, Saquon will probably be getting more of those than goal line carries. So that's only going to help Jalen Hurts. Now, at number 3, this is a bold prediction, but you know how we do around here. We have big balls. We let them breathe. So for my number 3 quarterback, I have Anthony Richardson. Similar player as the first 2 on my list. He looked good before his injury last year. Now, I've heard a lot of people say he's going to be a bust. And, you know, I understand it's a very small sample size that we got last year. But he is a very similar player to Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. He looked great before his injury. And he's now playing with a full team, a healthy team. He's got Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Jonathan Taylor from day one. And he's going to be running the ball a lot. All the most successful fantasy quarterbacks run the ball a lot. And the Colts also have a rock-solid offensive line. So as long as they protect him, he's going to have an unbelievable year.
Yeah. That's actually not so much of a hot take, man. I've been seeing some Anthony Richardson tape, and that guy, he's a freak of nature. And people don't realize he's very accurate too.
That's what I'm saying. He can throw the ball too. Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. I don't have him at number 3. However, my number 3 I have is Mr. C.J. Stroud from Houston.
Love that.
CJ, of course, coming out from an amazing rookie campaign. He set some rookie records, franchise records for sure. Last year, he was passing for over 4,100 yards, average 18 points a game, PPR. I mean, and that's with Tank Dell and Noah Brown and, Dalton Schultz, the tight end. So not saying those aren't good pass catchers. They're pretty solid pass catchers, but they're not elite pass catchers, right? So they went ahead and added Stephon Diggs, to that backfield there. And they also have Joe Mixon, who they're going to use a lot in the goal line. Also, a lot of dump balls for him as well. So I can see that being a lot of fantasy points for CJ because he doesn't like to rush in the 1-yard line. So I would definitely expect a little bit, a lot more of those 4 touchdown games you came to see last year.
Yeah, I love that. That's a big balls call right there, too. Putting him in the top 3, that's big balls. I'm going to talk about him soon, too. At the number 4 spot, I have Lamar Jackson. He's a similar player as the first 3 on my list. Spreads the ball around a lot. He's got a healthy Mark Andrews ready to go. And, he's still got the receiving core with Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, who are reliable enough to keep the ball moving. And most importantly, Lamar rushed for 800 yards, over 800 yards last year. He only had 5 rushing touchdowns, which is a big difference from the first guys I mentioned, like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. But that's huge. And I expect that 5 rushing touchdowns to be more like 10 this year. And they don't have the best offensive line, but Lamar is fine in the scramble. He can create more opportunities with the run when rushes are coming in. So I'm not worried about that at all. Expect a very similar year for Lamar, but more consistent than last year.
For my number 4, I have Mr. Anthony Richardson. Big man for the Colts. We all know he didn't play much last year, but man, did he come back stronger than ever. He's healthy. He's strong. He had an extra year to study, so I think he's going to be a much smarter quarterback. And I'm also a believer that you want to let your franchise quarterback sit for a year or two and learn. So the fact that he had to do that by injury was actually a blessing in disguise, because learning a year under Shane Steichen's system to actually learn how that offense is ran was a huge benefit to him. And then the fact that he could possibly work on his dynamics and his mechanics as well is going to make sure he has a better passing motion as well. So I know that people were concerned about his accuracy coming out of college, but I think those people are going to be the same people that were concerned about Lamar Jackson's passing accuracy, right? And we all know what happened there. He became the 2-time MVP for the NFL. So at the end of the day, Anthony Richardson is going to have a big year. He has a lot of weapons. And the sky's the limit for that guy.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear you had him at number 4, but I love it. I'm glad we're pretty much on the same page about that.
That's why I busted out laughing when you said number 3. I was like, oh, man, that's not so much of a hot take. I was like, I love him this year.
Yeah,
so
man.
Good.
I heard a couple people just saying, it's too small of a sample size. That may be true. We'll see. I don't think it is. Now, at number 5, I have Patrick Mahomes. Even with Kelsey as the only reliable pass catcher on the team, Mahomes is always at the top of the list. So with that said, he now has Rashee Rice, who has proven to be a consistent wide receiver, and Hollywood Brown was added to the roster. So look at that. His wide receiver core has been expanded, or it's not just leaning on Kelsey every play, and Pacheco can catch the ball too. So Mahomes, not the most mobile quarterback, but he is clutch, and he always turns in a good fantasy year. Last year was the worst year he's had in a long time, and with the additions of, not the addition of Rashee Rice, but the proven effectiveness of Rashee Rice as a pass catcher and Hollywood Brown added to the roster. And Kelsey, he was a little inconsistent last year. That could have been on Mahomes. I'm not sure. But those 3 as pass catchers and able to dump the ball off to Pacheco, expect Mahomes to bounce back in a major way this year. And that's why I have him as the number 5.
That's something that is not far-fetched at all. Never count Mahomes out. That's for sure.
Super Bowl champion.
Yes, sir. I mean, that's actually Taylor Swift, but
We'll see.
He's like a 3-time. He's a 3-time champion, I think, right?
Yeah,
something like that. 3-time champion. But as far as me, for my number 5, I actually have, gentlemen, you just talked about Lamar Jackson, number 5. So he's obviously super talented. He lost about 10 pounds in the offseason, so you're going to see him a lot quicker. So I see him doing a little bit more passing this year instead of running, because now he has Derrick Henry back there. So they're going to let Derrick Henry take a majority of those carries, and Lamar is just going to try to burn them like he always does. Runs a lot of those counters and those fakes and those options. And then you're going to see him throwing the ball to his horrible receivers, right? Because you're going to see a lot of big tight end sets, obviously. But, I mean, Mark Andrews and what was the rookie from last year, tight end? Can't recall his name.
Zay Flowers?
Zay Flowers is a stud in the outside, but there's another tight end. Though. Yeah, but the tight end for them as well, they have a backup tight end that's actually really good as well. So they have
rookie tight end.
Yeah, rookie tight end, but they run a lot of big tight end sets. That's Baltimore style. But I can see him having a really good year, and that's why I have him at number 5, because if he's healthy, he's definitely a top 5 player.
Oh, yeah. Now, number 6, I've got C.J. Stroud. Threw for over 4,000 yards his rookie season. He has Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and they added Stephon Diggs to the roster, as we already discussed, and Joe Mixon, who clearly be involved in the passing game. You had guys last year that were, safety valves for him, like Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz. They'll probably still be involved too. He has all the weapons to be in the top 3 this year, and they have an improved offensive line, which was a big hurdle for them last year. So expect more of the same, but even better.
All right. For my number 6, I do have Mr. Patrick Mahomes. So just one spot back from you. He's done a lot more with a lot less. Definitely. Last year was one of the worst receiving corps he's ever had, and he still managed to win the Super Bowl with it. So they managed to add a couple pieces. Xavier Watson, the rookie, was just added this offseason. They just signed Juju Smith-Schuster back, released Kadarius Toney, and then, of course, Rashee Rice is coming back, and they're probably not going to suspend him, so we don't know what's happening there. So you definitely have that plus Kelsey returning. So you're going to see a lot of Mahomes action again this year. So you can never count that team out. That guy always brings them back in, and he always scores. So definitely always a safe play for fantasy. You just got to grab them in the right value as far as rounds are concerned.
Yeah, and I'm noticing that you can take quarterbacks, but it feels like you can take them later this year than you did last year.
Mm-hmm.
With the mock drafts I've done and the real drafts I've done, they've been going a little bit later.
Yeah, 4th to the 5th round, you could grab yourself a Mahomes or a Jalen Hurts.
You'd be lucky to get Jalen Hurts that late. But one guy that I know you can get late, and this is the biggest balls call that I've made so far, in my opinion, with all these rankings. A guy that you can get super late, and I think is going to be an absolute monster, who I've ranked at number 7, is Jaden Daniels. Drafting rookie quarterbacks, always risky. But again, I just think the guy is going to be a total monster. The top fantasy quarterbacks often run the ball. And Daniels had over 1,000 rushing yards last year at LSU, but he can throw the ball too. He still has Terry McLaurin, and Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler will give him a safety valve to dump the ball. Not really sure about the rookie line. They have, I think, 3 rookies on their offensive line, but we'll see. That's the biggest concern that I have. Is he going to be protected? The Washington Commanders are not a good football team, but I do think at least on offense, they can turn things around this year. And I think Jaden Daniels will be a huge reason for that.
That is a big old balls call, Joe. I like it, though. Very big call. I never would see him that high, so that I like how you bring that different view, because it's a hot take and a half.
It is. As I said, out of all these rankings I've done, that's the ballsiest of them all. And I'm really eager to see. I was going to draft him. Waited a little too long. I was trying to get him in like the 10th round. But that's the benefit is you can grab him in the late rounds, and he could be, in the top 3 if he really, really plays to his full potential. And that's why I have him at number 7.
Yes, folks. And that's Joe's take, not mine. All right, guys? Remember that.
That's right.
All right. For my number 7, I played it a little bit more safe than that. Not as ballsy, Joe. I have Kyler Murray at number 7. The guy obviously missed a lot of games last year. He only played 8 games. Second half of the season, came off of IR. But he still averaged 18 points a game. The guy threw for over 1,800 yards. I mean, he was solid. And he has a new weapon. He has Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to be one of the best route runners you've probably ever seen in the NFL. He still has James Conner. Not that he's much of a pass catcher, but I think he does bring that dynamic of you have to respect the run so that it opens up the pass, So as far as that's concerned, I appreciate that. And, of course, he does bring a lot of potential on the ground as well. He's going to be somebody that's going to rush, and he's super quick, and they like to run that play action bootleg, on the red zone. So that's going to get them a lot of touchdowns. So I could see him jumping into the top 7 easily this year as well.
Absolutely. And one of the guys I also love on Arizona is Trey McBride. He's going to get fed the ball a lot, and he will be a safety valve when, when Kyler's getting rushed, he'll dump the ball off to someone like Trey McBride frequently. So I love him as an addition to the league. Now, spoiler alert, this is another big balls call. I do not have Kyler Murray in my top 15. That was a difficult decision for me to make. But I stand by it because I haven't seen him really play in the last couple of years. And now you could say the same thing. Well, you have Jaden Daniels. You haven't seen him in the NFL. And you've got Anthony Richardson. You haven't really seen him play. But over the last couple of years, Kyler has not proven to be a top 15 quarterback. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I have, I'm heavily invested in people like Trey McBride and also James Conner. I just like Arizona as a football team, and I want to see them do well. So I truly hope that Kyler is a top 10 fantasy quarterback, but I just need to see him back in full form before I can put him on my list.
That's fair enough. But bullshit.
It's probably wrong, but guys, that's why you're getting contrast here.
You have to. You have to. If we agreed on everything, you probably wouldn't watch us, guys.
Yeah,
just kidding. Nobody watches us.
You've got to you've got to hear different perspectives, and if you're on the fence about someone, maybe one of these perspectives will push you on either side.
Yeah. Maybe you'll fall on the fence and crush your nuts.
Or maybe you just stand right in the center. Yes.
Yeah, and then don't blame us because you know what? We're not setting your lineups, guys. This is all free will, right? This is free fantasy advice.
Now at number 8, I have Jordan Love. He really settled into the Green Bay offense last year. Finished the regular season with over 4,000 passing yards and has the same cast of wide receivers. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, all reliable options. None of those guys are going to be like wide receiver 1, but those are all guys you could plug in confidence at the flex spot. And, we didn't even really get to see Aaron Jones last year, and Jordan Love still looked amazing. So expect him to continue spreading the ball to Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and expect Josh Jacobs to be a little bit involved too. And I just see him having, another great year and possibly even better than last year.
It's funny because this is probably going to be one of the few ones we do have exactly alike because I also have Jordan Love up on my list. And he leapfrogged a lot of quarterbacks that other analysts have ranked a lot, far above him. And I just think he's going to come in. He's going to repeat on his success from last year because he has the same team. The only difference is he's upgraded at running back. He's improved on the O-line, and he has the same exact coach and coordinator, right? So, or actually, he's upgraded back to Matt Fleeberless or Averflus, whatever his name is. I think he's back there. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think overall that team's going to come in. They're going to they're going to start on fire. And I wouldn't even be surprised if they upset my Eagles the first game because my Eagles are a newer team put together and they're a team that's pretty consistent and coming back together. So they might have better chemistry.
Now at number 9, I have my boy from the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff. I know all the analysts have him outside the top 15, maybe even outside of the top 20. I don't think Jared Goff gets the respect he deserves. I've said this over and over. He finished the regular season with 4,575 passing yards. He will have another great year, and you can pick him in the later rounds. And they have the best offensive line in the NFL. So he is heavily protected. He's got time to throw to some of the best pass catchers in the NFL. Expect another 4,000 plus yard season from Jared Goff.
That is another big balls call. I'm definitely gonna be clipping on your stuff this segment because you're gonna be bringing in all the clicks here.
Let's hope so.
Yes, sir.
Love them or hate them. I've got some hot takes.
Yes, sir. Hey, they're good ones. I like them. And you're right. He was the league leader last year in yards, 4,500. So definitely, no one came above him. Literally. Dak
Tua
came
did.
close.
Tua did actually come above him.
Oh, 46. You're right. 46-24 for Tua, and Dak was at 45-16 for passing yards. So those were the top three guys. For my number 9 guy, I actually had Mr. Joe Burrow coming back. He has those Slim Shady vibes this year. I said it before. I like it. He has a little bit of swagger. T. Higgins needs to get paid, so guess what? He's going to be healthy. He's going to play through injuries, and he's going to ball out. Jamar Chase last year didn't have Joe Burrow for half the season. He still did okay, but he's going to need to ball out as well. So you're going to see a big year from Joe Burrow. He's finally healthy. That elbow's finally looking good again, and so he's going to need to show him the league why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league again.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what's going on with Jamar Chase yet, but a full year from Jamar and Joe Burrow is going to be fireworks. And again, T. Higgins right there to complement both of them. That's a good mix. And they don't have, Joe Burrow to just dump the ball off to anymore, but that's okay. They got Zach Moss back there. He'll be fine.
Joe Mixon
and Chase Brown. What did I say?
Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Joe Burrow doesn't have Joe Mixon back there, but he has Zach Moss and he's got Chase Brown, so he'll be just fine. Now at number 10, I've got Dak Prescott. Dak finished the regular season with 4,500 yards, over 4,500 yards. He is arguably the best wide receiver in the league with CeeDee Lamb, who just got paid big time. So he's going to come out and prove to everyone that he's worth it. And he's got other wide receivers on the team that complement him very well. I mean, I don't see him being able to replicate the level of production that he had last year, but at full health with CeeDee Lamb, I think he's going to be a really productive guy that can squeak into the top 10. And the Cowboys just need to protect him. They have a solid O-line, so I see that being the case.
Yeah, he had a good year last year. I'm not that high on him, of course. I don't know if I just don't feel like he has that many weapons. Jake Ferguson's good. Obviously, CeeDee's the man. But beyond that, it's kind of a question mark for me, especially with those running backs being so suspect. But for my number 10 guy, I have Mr. Brock Purdy. He had an amazing year last year, even with Christian McCaffrey rushing for over 2,000 yards almost. Brock Purdy threw for over 4,000 yards. He averaged 18 yards a game. He almost hit over 300 points in the fantasy season in a PPR league. So he was on fire when the guy was doing it. And I think at the end of the day, he's a really good value laid on too. So you get somebody like that giving you 18 points a game, that's a really solid starter for you, especially in someone you could get pretty late around the 8th, 9th round.
Absolutely. And that segues perfectly into my number 11, Brock Purdy. I agree with everything you just said. I actually had my first draft earlier this week, and I grabbed Brock Purdy in the 9th round. That's amazing. I mean, the dude is another guy that doesn't get the respect he deserves. And he threw for 4,280 yards during the regular season. He has one of the best offenses in the league. CMC, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle. He's going to do great things once again. Maybe this year he'll get the respect he deserves. Easily could slide into the top 10. But right now, he's at the 11th spot for me, one below you.
All right. And for my number 11 spot, I actually have Mr. Jared Goff. He had over 4,500 yards, which you mentioned. But, I mean, he did that with two premier running backs. He had Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who I was really high on last year.
Oh, yeah.
But David Montgomery, man, they both did excellent. They both had over 1,000 rushing yards last year, him and Jahmyr Gibbs. Actually, Jahmyr had 900, but he had all-purpose yards over 1,000.
Yeah.
And man, that guy was still putting in work with only one good receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown and actually Sam Laporta is a great receiver too. But outside of that, they didn't have any other pass catchers. I mean, everyone else was a running back and a bunch of role players. So now they have Jameson Williams coming in a full year healthy. Hopefully he doesn't get it suspended. But O-line for a whole year. Taylor Decker last year was injured for the first few games. So to have him back for the entire season should be a big step up for them. So I expect a lot of damage for Jared Goff and a revenge tour, of course, for all the disrespect.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that. And I do think you're right about that. Now at number 12, I've got Tua Tagovailoa. Tua was a beast last year. He had over 4,600 passing yards, but he was inconsistent. It's hard to keep him out of the top 10 when you have, Tyreek as your number one receiver and Jalen Waddle, who's a total beast as well. I just don't see him being able to replicate what he did last year.
And I actually completely agree with you because I also have Tua at number 12. So that's pretty funny. And I agree, 4,600 yards. I mean, Josh McDaniels caught the league on fire last year, like by storm. So I don't expect that to happen again. I expect everybody to be ready for those motion offenses. Yes, they're still going to score some big plays. Yes, they're going to catch some people off guard, but I don't think it's going to be as often as it was last year. So it'll still happen, but it'll probably be on more running back reverses, which means Tua's stats will go down. And he only averaged 15 points a game last year, which means although he had 4,600 yards, he didn't have very many touchdowns. As a matter of fact, if you were to look at his touchdowns, I actually had 29 passing touchdowns, which is pretty solid. But,
yeah, that is solid.
But to only average that many points is kind of weird. Actually, yeah, that's right. 16 points a game. It's not that great. But at the end of the day, I'm not too keen on him, and I'm not going to, grab him early. He's more of a 10th round pick, in my opinion. And if you get him around there, that's pretty solid.
Oh yeah, for sure. And he was very inconsistent last year. So it's hard to put a guy in your team and start him with confidence when you're really not sure which Tua you're going to get. Now at number 13, I've got Joe Burrow. He's healthy, but I'm going to have to see a little bit more consistency before I can commit to him being in the top 10. I would love to have him on my roster because I know you can get him in later rounds of the draft too. And with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and a healthy Joe Burrow, that offense is going to be explosive. So expect him to bounce back and be the same guy that we saw from a couple years ago.
I like Joe Burrow. I definitely think hopefully he does come back healthy, and obviously he could still be in that top, even better. But for my guy, for my number 13 guy, I do have, gentlemen, you have much higher, but I do see the potential for him, Mr. Jaden Daniels. So Jaden, obviously, another Lamar Jackson type player. So he has, a smaller quarterback, but super quick, lightning fast. Amazing moves. Obviously, hopefully, Washington does a lot to protect him because you don't want your star quarterback to get hurt. And they will be playing from behind in a lot of games, so they will be able to be in some shootouts, especially against the Cowboys and the Eagles because there won't be much defense, I don't think, on both sides. But that's going to allow him to play some big games. And, he's used to that playing coming from LSU, especially when the Heisman last year.
Yeah, when I got Purdy, I was actually gunning for Jaden Daniels or Brock Purdy. They were hovering around the same spot. At number 14, I have Caleb Williams. Heisman Trophy winner that set a bunch of school records last year in passing and rushing. He had 52 touchdowns in 2022 over 14 games. And 41 touchdowns in 2023 over 12 games. That's crazy. I know it's college, but that's crazy. With his two wide receivers being DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, That's a recipe for success. And then he has DeAndre Swift and Cole Kmet as a safety valve. And those guys are solid. They're good football players. Cole Kmet's actually, a sneaky good football player. And DeAndre Swift, we've all seen what he can do when he stays healthy. So he could easily be in the top 10 this year if that offense falls in sync and really gets going. And they have an improved offensive line that actually looked pretty good last year.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. For myself, though, for my number 14 overall quarterback, I do have Dak Prescott. I know he came in at number 6 last year in the top 10 as far as scoring. I mentioned a little bit ago, I think he takes a step back this year. It's a contract year. He doesn't have his that many weapons. CD just got paid. Maybe he takes it easy because he got his money. Terrible running backs. It's going to be a terrible year for the Cowboys. I can already see the misery happening, and unfortunately, I'm going to be laughing over here. So I apologize, Cowboys fans, but I can see this coming. So just don't be surprised when it happens, and you're going to say I'm hating, but, I'm seriously looking at it like your team is ass. So, and that's unfortunately the truth. But CD's the man, but he can't throw himself the ball, so unfortunately that's lost there.
I disagree with some of that take, but you make some solid points. I think you make more points about Dak as an individual than the team as a whole. They still have a really good defense too.
But they lost to Ron Bland, and Trevon Diggs has been getting cooked all training camp. So
we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Now at number 15, I've got my boy Kirk Cousins. I love him. Before he got hurt last year, I know everyone's got him outside the top 20, but I don't care. He is on a new team. Before he got hurt last year, Cousins was the number 1 fantasy quarterback in the league for like 6 weeks straight. He's always been a solid quarterback. He's always been a very fun and reliable fantasy quarterback. And I think Drake London and Bijan Robinson are going to benefit in a huge way with Kirk Cousins leading the Falcons. I'm still not sure about Kyle Pitts. We'll have to wait and see. But I love Kirk Cousins. I think that's going to be a completely different team this year. And I know there's questions about their offensive line, but their offensive line compared to last year looks really good.
For my number 15 and final player to round out the top 15 quarterbacks, I have Mr. Trevor Lawrence for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Reason being, he just got a couple new weapons. He has Gabe Davis on the outside this offseason. Obviously, Calvin Ridley is gone, so they replaced him with Gabe Davis. They went ahead and added some offensive linemen there. Travis Etienne's coming back, and they still have, of course, Christian Kirk will finally be coming back. That's the other weapon because they lost him for the second half of the season. And then they still have Evan Ingram on the outside. So I think that with all that being said, they should be back in a good place. And then they drafted that rookie, Brian Robinson Jr. So I think that's going to be their new number 1 because he does a little bit of everything. He was the second guy over there at LSU that Jaden Daniels was throwing through. So hopefully he does have all the talent that he looks to have, but only time will tell. So, but I think because Trevor Lawrence did throw for over 4,000 yards, he had a down season at 16 points a game. I could see him coming back and having a better season under that Doug Peterson offense.
I totally agree with everything you're saying, and I've had him in past years on my fantasy team. He's a very reliable player for the most part. He's going to have a couple games where he lets you down, but overall, he's a producer, and he can run the ball too. He can get you some yards here and there and even sneak into the end zone. He did have a down year last year, but he was, the whole team was marred by injuries, and now he's got a healthy squad back. He's got the same weapons as before where he's going to continue building that rapport with them. And the safety valve in Evan Ingram, he had more targets last year than any tight end by far. That's going to continue, and I think Ingram's going to have a huge year. Christian Watson's going to come back Christian Kirk's going to come back and remind everyone, what he can do when he's healthy. And, you've got Travis Etienne. So recipe for success baked into the cake, rock solid quarterback. I love him at the 15th spot too.
That was your boy last year, Christian Kirk.
Oh yeah. I didn't draft him this year, but I'm looking for him on waivers. If he's got a couple good teams, I'm going to slide him onto the bench.
Welcome back, big ballers. We hope you enjoyed our show. I mean, that was a lot of fun putting it together. Top 15 quarterbacks. We definitely have some more content coming up for you here. I'm going to go ahead and let Joe go over that, but we appreciate you guys. Joe, let them know what we have coming up next week.
Next week, we're going to drop another video, our top 15 tight ends, and then we're going to continue throughout the season with our regular episodes and player profiles. So stay tuned.